What is up, guys? Eric here from EBM Productions, here with another video. Again, different video this time. I actually had this idea 2 weeks ago when I saw a post and I can't seem to find it again. Anyway, referring to some grappling related changes in the UFC rules that might be coming up. And I actually got the idea of what rules I would have changed if I had the magic wand to change any of them in the UFC. Like any rule, and then on top of it, specifically grappling related rules and how they would affect the outcomes of fights. Which, by the way, just want to get onto Google again. And let's use Islam versus Volk 1. Let's go even crazier. Let's say Abel Trujillo versus Habib Nurmagomedov. Now, I'll get to why these make a lot of sense. Or even T-Wood, Tyron Woody versus Usman. Actually, that's a good one to use because Hamzat versus Dricus du Plessis was just as dominant of a win for Hamzat as Usman's win over Tyron Woodley. And why this plays into everything, I'll explain now, after I take a sip here. So after my trip this weekend, guys, I just want to throw this in as a tidbit, I noticed that the throat situation, sinuses, my body's reactions to a lot of stuff this side is because of the air quality. The air quality is ass this side. So what ends up happening is my voice starts cracking. My voice starts going away. All kinds of rubbish like that. Let me just move the camera a tiny bit. So all kinds of shit like that happens and I can't speak properly when my voice is actually quite deeper, etc. Anyhow, so what I would change is certain rules on the ground, like 12 to 6 elbows, headbutts, definitely headbutts, knees to a grounded opponent. Now, Peter Yan versus Aljamain Sterling. So I'm putting this all here because I want notes, so to speak, to give an example of where these rules would have changed probably the outcome of the whole fight and how it might have shaped the whole sport. Because these are things we do not train for. Hell, with a lot of jiu-jitsu grapplers, this would destroy their game. This would destroy their games. And I understand why some of these rules don't exist right now, like soccer kicks to a downed opponent. But I specifically would have changed these for you, not the soccer kicks one. The soccer kicks one, the problem I have with that is a lot of guys almost get somebody down and need to work from there. And then they get placed in that soccer kick position. Kneeing them, that would be a middle ground that puts the guy kneeing the person on the ground in a problematic position if he misses. A kick, no. You can keep your balance and you can still have distance. Even if the guy grabs you, just sink down and sprawl. You see what I mean? And from that position, it will be hard to get somebody down. It would be very hard unless the kick was so bad and threw them so badly off balance that you just tip them over. You just tip them over and they fall. So the first rules that I mentioned, that is what I would change, specifically the headbutts one. So let's get to the headbutts one. There's many moments in the Abel Trujillo fight versus Habib. Same with the Gleison T-Bound one, where the positions were reversed, where headbutts would have changed a lot. And also, since it's an orthodox versus southpaw situation, if I remember correctly, let me just be sure about that before I talk out of my arse, get into Abel Trujillo. Where is his Tapology? Because I don't want to get into one of these big pages or even his wiki page. Do they say at all which stance he fights out of? Come on. Computer is freezing up again on me. I hate this damn laptop. Anything from 6th gen and earlier from Intel's side cannot handle. Let me actually just Google this fight, because it doesn't matter if I'm talking out of my ass right now. The point is, there was moments because of the grappling exchanges where their positions. Yeah, I'm thinking about Gleison Tebow. But anyway, regardless, when a wrestler ducks, the knees, specifically the knees to a grounded opponent, and if you switch stances and you guys duck or slip, then many times you bump heads. Headbutts will cancel out those moments. Like, Figgy versus, what's his name? The guy he brutalized. Benavidez. Figgy versus Benavidez. Benavidez claimed that the headbutt was the reason why the fight went its way, when the rematch definitely proved that wrong. Then Ankalaev versus, what's his face? I forgot his name. Kutalaba. It's another example of a headbutt moment that apparently changed the fight, but in fact, the headbutt would have favored Ankalaev even more if that happened. And on the wrestling exchanges, when Abel Trujillo was able to reverse positions on Khabib, that's where headbutts, certain elbows, etc. would have been very advantageous. Even on different fights, many different fights, where Khabib was reversed for a split moment in his early career, is where the headbutts would have mattered. Which other fights? Frankie Edgar versus Yair Rodriguez. How badly and how quickly that fight would have been stopped if Frankie was just railing headbutts. Okay, possibly you would have had to do a Thai plum from the mounted position while tripoding and then landing your headbutts. That fight would have been over in a minute if that started happening, or let's say 2-3 minutes max. It wouldn't have taken so long before the knockout, TKO, etc. How many other fights? Hundreds of fights. I'm just gonna stop there. It's 10 o'clock at night, so don't worry, guys. Point is, for that fight, the headbutt specifically would have been a thing. Hell, if Khabib used the headbutts, how many of his fights would he just have stopped, guys? Because clearly the hands were not enough. The headbutts do so much damage. I think just based on that, the ref would have stepped in almost every time Khabib fought. Almost every time, if he started using his headbutts correctly. 12-6 elbow, the famous John Jones loss. That's where that fight still has to be turned over. That's where John Jones would have won. He wouldn't have lost. Which other fights? A few moments, foul moments wouldn't have happened. That changed the trajectory of certain fights. I'm trying to think. What other fight was limited because 12-6s weren't allowed? There's many. Anyway, you guys probably know what I mean. Let me think now. Knees to a grounded opponent, Peter Yan versus Aljamain Sterling. Peter Yan, most likely at that point. I wonder. Hold on. Bantamweight rankings. Let's say August 2020, if there was any. Okay, Henry Cejudo was still number 1 because I think he didn't retire at that point, but wasn't he retired at that point? No, this is completely wrong because Demetrius Johnson is on this list. What the let me just get a proper one because definitely he wasn't. I remember it was Aljamain. Number 1 was still Peter Yan, if I'm not mistaken. You see what I mean? These lists, you see? Archive, please, let's get a proper one because I don't know why it's so hard to find this shit now. Anyhow, back then, Peter Yan would have stayed champion for a while unless he instantly rematched Peter Yan at that time. Yeah, Corey Sandhagen was on top still. We know how that fight went eventually with him and Peter Yan. Just want to make sure if this was... But this is fan rankings, you see. Why am I not getting this? But anyway, that fight was very dominant for Peter Yan. Very dominant. And if Peter Yan cemented it by TKO via the knee on the ground, then I really think that Dana wouldn't have given Aljo an instant rematch, because that wasn't close. Up until that third round where he got, fourth round, where he got kneed in the head, wasn't close. So then Merab would have been way down on the list. Cejudo was still there, but that was after he retired, so I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. Cruz was still there. Chito Vera was still climbing. Sean O'Malley was way back at that point. I really think the trajectory, tonight I can't speak, of all of these fights would have changed. And just imagine how different many of these other fights where wrestlers was just chilling on top of guys would have ended. Yeah, I like this idea that there's some grappling rules that's going to change, where guys don't get scored as heavily when they're just holding somebody against the fence or in a position on the ground without advancing. I think that's good. I'm just a bit scared they go too far and then grappling isn't really scored correctly, but oh well, let's see what happens in the future. Also, guys, I'll make a more in-depth video of this, or expanded video on this topic in the future if I get some time. But for now, I'm going to focus on Canelo versus Crawford, which everybody's talking about. Lopez versus Gene Silva. Oof, such a fun fight. And how UFC No Check kind of stinks. I might make a video on that if I get time, because it's already, technically Thursday, because I'm going to go to bed after this. Yeah. So there's a lot of videos coming. And then I want to make a video about Bleach again after this, actually. Yeah, see, a lot of videos is coming. Let me know what rules you guys would have changed. Cheers.